And thank you, Melanie. We really are appreciative of BOMA, everything you do, and for the opportunity to be able to sponsor an event like this, especially emotional resilience, which I think we all need a lot of as we enter into November and the election and COVID and any other things, but that's not for me to talk about. Anyway, Mark and I are the owners of AK Building Services. We're a commercial cleaning company based in South Florida. We are second generation family business, and we really service customers primarily in South Florida, but truly all over the entire state of Florida, and we're proud to call South Florida home. Next slide, please. The industries we serve: universities and schools, office buildings, industrial, corporate headquarters, municipalities, and medical. Before Mel, don't switch yet, but when I was asking Melanie, what should we talk about in our brief time here, she said one thing that people are really asking about is UV lights and electrostatic spraying. So one thing to just address with UV lights, that technology has been around for probably 100 years, ultraviolet radiation, and primarily used in medical. But in the janitorial sector, we really don't have as much use with it. And that's because, one, it's very specific to an industry. The FDA hasn't really approved it for other applications yet, so we couldn't use it with great confidence. It needs duration and really more research. There are very cool UV robots, though, that we should all look towards in the future. But right now, those range from like $30,000 to $90,000. So that's not really in our wheelhouse of our go-to toolkit. But what is electrostatic spraying. Next slide, please. I think by now, most of you have heard electrostatic spraying. It's definitely within property management and janitorial, a buzzword that's been thrown around. But I want to take a minute just to get this very sort of techie scientific slide out there for you guys to take a look at to understand it. Electrostatic spraying was actually invented a while ago and primarily used on cruise ships to combat the norovirus, also locker rooms, professional athletes. And now with COVID, it's really, again, as I say, our toolkit. It's become one other method for disinfecting. But essentially, for those science geeks out there, you take an electrostatic charge, you take the chemistry, which is your disinfectant, right? You charge it, it becomes a charged particle, and then it sort of gloms on or sticks to a surface. And that's why Clorox calls theirs Total 360, because it's really quite incredible how a disinfectant will just wrap around every surface, the same way that lint will stick to your clothing. Next slide, please. So we really like it because it's fast and effective coverage, right? 300 square feet a minute, 18,000 square feet with a continuous spray. So if you're covering like large spaces in office buildings, it's very, very effective. It's very easy to use, and it's very safe too. You know, you can walk into the room a few minutes after it's done and you don't have to worry about, you know, your lungs or anything like that, and it will not damage electronics, papers, and anything's on your desk. That's important. Next slide, please. So a lot of people say, well, what do I use? There's different kinds. Here, I would say the Victory and the Clorox Total 360 are both the sort of top players in this industry. The Victory offers an amazing backpack electrostatic sprayer. Now that's really good for mobility. It's good to get around quickly. It's lighter. The downside is because you're not plugged into the wall, your electrostatic charge will weaken as time goes on. Whereas the Clorox 360 machine, a little wonkier to use, not as nimble, but you're going to get a consistent charge throughout. So as you're picking and choosing, you decide, you know, what's better for your organization. Next slide, please. So I think at the end of the day, you know, we all want health and a safety building and a work environment for everybody. For those of you who did not know, October 2nd was National Custodian Recognition Day. So if you did not take a moment to say thank you to your janitorial service provider, janitor, custodian, please say thank you. They are really the people who are on the front lines. And for us, the lifeblood of our industry, you know, they're out there keeping everyone safe. And we really are thankful for everyone who does that. So as I wrap up, I would like to say thank you to our employees and thank you to everybody. And again, I'm Sherry Cedar from AK Building Services. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. That was good information. I think even though we may know some of it, it's always nice to hear it again, right? Okay. Oh, yeah, I forgot everybody was muted. Sorry. I'm expecting a reaction. I'm like,
Melanie, is Sherry related to John Cedar?
no.
That's my father-in-law.
She is.
That's your father-in-law.
Yes, and Mark's father.
Send him my regards. How's he doing?
He's doing well.
Doing well?
Yep.
Send him my regards.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness.
All right.
You look like him. You look like him. You look like Chris
Small
Cuomo
world.
and John Cedar.
Wow.
Okay, I'll mute.
So with all the silence, it reminds me of when I used to do stand-up and I wasn't doing very well. You know, you'd look out and everybody was just sitting there. It's just not a nice feeling. Okay, so right now I have the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker, Dr. Stevie Don. And she and I have become friends over the years, and I've accepted a personal coaching from her, which really helped change the way I view a lot of things, especially during this tumultuous time. So as a motivational speaker and coach, Dr. Stevie Don is focused on helping people unleash unstoppable success in their lives, both personally and professionally. Her experience as a 4-time business owner, along with her work in the private and public sector, allows her to enhance her presentations with real-life stories and examples that are applicable to every audience. Her educational background includes a master's degree in sociology from Wichita State University and a doctorate in leadership from Colorado State University. With over 20 years of teaching and training experience, Dr. Stevie Don approaches every engagement with humor, inspiration, and energy to get people moving towards their best lives. Take it away, Stevie.
Thank you. Thank you. So I know that normally we would get to be in person, which would be amazing. And today we're having to do it this way. So I have 2 requests for you. If you are willing to leave your video on so that I can see facial expressions and then head nods occasionally, that helps me out as a speaker to not feel like I'm speaking into the abyss, as Mel was just talking about. But if you will keep yourself muted, just so we can keep focused, and I will be asking you to use the chat box. So go ahead and open up the chat box and we will use that. Your work computer doesn't have a camera, I understand, no problem. But we'll use the chat box to kind of communicate the way we normally would if we were live and in person. But this is kind of the best way for us to do it in this setting. So Mel reached out to me and asked me to do this presentation for y'all on emotional resilience. And when I was thinking about what kind of the best introduction, right, to emotional resilience that I could think of, what's the best story to start with, I thought about something that happened to me years ago that I saw another speaker do that I thought was pretty impactful. And so I thought I would just copy it for you today. So this is what we're going to do. So show of hands, if we were in a room together and I held up this $20 bill, who wants it? Just show of hands if you would take a free $20 bill from me today, right? Okay, great. Put your hands down. Awesome. So the speaker stands up on stage and he says, hey, who would want the $20 bill? And everybody's hand goes up in the air and everybody loves it. And then he takes the $20 bill and he crumples it up into this little tiny ball. And he said, who would want it? So who of you would still want the 20 bucks? You'd take it crumpled up, right? Same amount of hands pretty much. Absolutely. Then he takes the ball, he throws it on the $20 bill, he throws it on the floor, he stomps on it, kind of digs in with his heel, and it comes up looking really gross. I'm not going to do that today, but it looked all kind of gross. It kind of had some tears in it. And he said, who would still want the $20 bill? So who of you would still want it, right? All the hands would go up in the air. And then he said something, and this is why it sticks with me, is he said, you know, you just learned a very important life lesson. no matter how crumpled up, no matter how dirty, no matter how beaten up it was, you still wanted it because it still had value and it still had worth. And he said, in life, you're going to get crumpled up. You're going to get stepped on. You're going to get smushed into the dirt. You're going to have to do things you don't love. You're going to make decisions and then regret them later. All of these things are going to happen. But what you have to remember is you still have value and you're still worthy. And to me, that's kind of what 2020 has felt like. I don't know if anybody else feels that way. I feel like it crumpled me up into a ball. It stepped on me a couple times. And it's been this idea of straightening it back out and getting back to where I want to be, right? And understanding that in our daily life, we're going to have times like that, but we can always bounce back. And that is, I think, what emotional resilience is really all about, is it's about bouncing back when things knock you down, whether it's 2020 or something else in your life that kind of gets to us. And so today, what I want to give you are some tips and some strategies for how you can come back faster, how you can make that bounce back happen quicker so that you can get on with your day and move forward with your life. Because I think that's a really important part of us being able to continue to work and continue to grow and continue to have all of the things that we want. So Mel did an awesome job giving you an intro about me. I always like to throw in some fun things. So fun things about me: I am addicted to sharks. There's one that my head covers up during the presentation. I served in the US Marine Corps. I've danced on the Las Vegas Strip, and I'm addicted to coffee and Diet Coke. So, you know, also red wine on the right kind of day. But those are some fun things. I love the thumbs up for the wine. That's amazing. Those are some fun things about me. I always like to throw those in there because really it's just about me sharing with you the things that I've learned over the years through my education, through my research, and just through my own clients and my own life. So first thing I'd like us to do is in the chat box, could you give me an answer on a scale of 1 to 10? How are you feeling today? Just today, right now, how do you feel? Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being awesome, 1 being I'm kind of ready for it to be Friday already, but I know it's only Tuesday. Like somewhere in that scale, where are you at? Let's see what's coming up in the chat right now. We've got lots of 8s, 7s, 9s. Y'all are feeling pretty good. I love it. 4, 5, 3, absolutely. Absolutely. So here's my question, right? You guys seem to be feeling pretty well, which is great. How many of us know that it only takes one moment to drop that number, right? One call from your mother-in-law, one email from your boss, right? Spilling coffee on your white shirt, right? Just takes one little thing, right? To lower that number. And that's, again, why emotional resilience is so important. We've got to be able to bounce it back, right? If we start out in an 8 for the day, no matter what the day takes us on as a journey, how do we make sure that at the end of the day, we're back up at an 8, or even better, we're at a 9? So why is emotional resilience such an important topic? Besides the 2020 chaos, besides the change that we're all faced with, it's the fact that 2 out of 3 employees report that work is their most stressful situation, right? That no matter what else is going on in their lives, and we have people, Jessica here with her beautiful new baby, obviously, we've got that, no matter what's going on, and I'm sure that is stressful. I am not a mom, and there's a reason, and I'm sure that is a stressful environment, but no matter what else is going on in our lives, work tends to be where we spend the most time, and work tends to be our most stress-related situation. So it's important that we talk about emotional resilience within the confines of work, because that's where we're going to encounter it the most. And in fact, US companies spend on average $190 billion trying to help workers combat stress. And emotional resilience is one of those areas that can help us in combating stress. So a lot of you have probably seen something similar to this before. If you've done any kind of personal development or growth webinars or seminars, those kinds of things. I call it the success model because I really try and help people use it to get to that level of success that they're really looking for. but I think we could call it a bunch of different things. The idea behind it is that our beliefs, what we think, leads to what we feel, and what we feel dictates our actions and behaviors, and then those actions and behaviors lead to results. So let me give you, we'll start with a professional example first. So let's say that you are looking at going up for a promotion. You've applied for a promotion within your own company or maybe outside your company. And when you get up that day, it's the day of the interview, you start thinking about how, well, I'm not sure that I'm going to get it. I mean, what if they don't like me? I mean, what if I don't have the experience that they need? I mean, I really get nervous in interviews. And all of these beliefs start to change how you feel. And so now all of a sudden you're feeling less confident, insecure, nervous, anxious. So then when you get to the interview, how do you perform? Well, you're scared, you're nervous, you're anxious, you're less confident, so you don't perform well. So what's the result? You don't get the promotion, right? Goes to somebody else. Here's the trick that I think most of us have to remember and put into our brains all the time. Your brain is wired to prove it right. Think about that. Your brain is wired to prove itself right. So your beliefs were that you weren't good enough, and the results proved it. Your brain took you on a whole little path that proved, oh yeah, you're not good enough. You can't get that promotion. And it became true. So we have to really take control of our beliefs and our feelings so that our actions and results actually lead to us being right. But that means our beliefs have to change. Here's another example. Let's take a more personal one. I don't know how many of you have had to deal with this, but I have definitely felt like being stuck at home has not been great for my weight management plan, right? Let's just say weight management plan. It's much better than saying it any other way. So we're going to say that, weight management plan. So I get up in the morning, I stand in front of the mirror, and I'm like, oh, COVID-19, that's a real thing. Yeah, so I put that on and, oh gosh, you know, is my hair doing this thing? And so I have all these beliefs of I'm fat, I'm overweight, I don't look good today, all of these beliefs, which lead to what kind of feelings? Shame, guilt, right? Self-esteem issues, which lead to what kind of behaviors? Well, for me, when I'm not feeling great about myself, my number one go-to behavior besides the red wine is eating ice cream. Anybody else feel like that's a really great behavior when you're not feeling good? Right? Let's eat the ice cream. Well, what happens? I eat the ice cream. The result is I gain weight. So I just proved my brain right. Because I said I'm fat and overweight. Here we go. I just made it happen. Because I'm that person who I'm probably only going to work out if I actually feel good. I am not that person who works out when they're feeling bad about themselves. That's not how it works for me. Workout does not give me that kind of high. I need to be like, I'm already feeling good. Let me get on the Peloton. That's how it works for me. So it all starts with our belief systems. And so I ask you to think about, what are you believing about yourself? What are you believing about these things that are happening around you that are stressing you out? And are your beliefs leading you into a position where your results are going to prove you right? Because taking the same two examples, we could say, okay, well, if instead when I'm going up for a promotion, if my beliefs are, I'm amazing, I can do this, they would love to have me, I've been working for this company for 5 years, it's my turn. Look at even how saying that changes my vibe. Right? My body language changes. My feelings change. Now I'm confident and self-assured. Now I go into the interview and I kill it. The result is I get the promotion. I proved my brain right. Same thing on the weight management plan. If I get up in the morning and I look at myself and I go, wow, you're strong. You have dancer legs. That's an important thing. Like, you look good. Then my feelings are, yeah, I got this. And so my behavior is, hey, I'll get on the Peloton and do a couple more miles on the bike. The result is I lose the weight. I prove myself right. So one of the things that I do with all of my coaching clients when they first come to me is I sit down and I say, what beliefs are holding you back? Because there's something that you're having a belief about that's getting in your way. And when it comes to emotional resilience, the reason this is important is because those beliefs lead to our feelings. So if your feelings are negative, there's beliefs behind it that are making it negative. If your feelings are sad and depressed and not feeling good about things, there's a belief behind it that's leading you that way. If we can change the belief, we can change your whole life. And emotional resilience involves that ability to reframe. So emotional reframing is one of my favorite techniques in the emotional resilience toolkit. And I'm going to go over all of them with you, but it's my favorite because it's the quickest and it waits for no one. You don't have to get somebody's permission. You don't have to check in with somebody to do this. You can just do this, just you, 30 seconds. You just have to realize that the feelings you're feeling are something you don't want to feel. And how many of us, when we get to a negative place, we go, yeah, I don't want to feel that, right? We all kind of feel that way. When you get to negative, you're like, I wish I didn't feel this way. Well, guess what? You can change it. So you stop the feeling and you reframe the thought. You reframe the belief. Come up with a belief that's more positive, and you will feel all the feelings that are more positive. So even at work, when changes happening around us a lot, instead of seeing change as negative, because in your head you start thinking about what's the worst that could happen, start making your thoughts about what's the best that could happen. What if this change worked in your favor? What if it ended up being great for you? Changing that thought and that belief will change those feelings, which will lead to more actions and more results that are more what you want. So the number one thing we can do when we're feeling low, when we're feeling down, when life has crumpled us up, is we can start thinking and analyzing our beliefs. And that will change our results because the two are definitely intertwined. So I always say, change your mindset, change your life. And it is true. I am living proof of it. The first 26 years of my life was devoted to dance. And I've mentioned that I'm a dancer. But when I was 26, I had a career-ending injury. And in fact, they told me I would never dance again, but they said, you're going to struggle to walk. And in that moment, right, I went down the pit of despair that I think anybody would go through in that moment, right? And I spent months just crying, eating all the ice cream, by the way, crying and upset and all of this. And then I decided, you know what? This is not helping me. Thinking all these negative thoughts of what could have been that I'm never going to have now, like I could have been some Broadway star. Probably wouldn't have been that, by the way. I am not that good. But anyway, in my head, I might have thought that. And so all these negative thoughts are just going to keep me down. I got to change this. And so it was me thinking about, what would be possible. And when I went to the next doctor's appointment, instead of saying this whole, you'll never dance again, I said, is it all kinds of dance? Or are there some kinds of dance that maybe I could do again? Yes, I would never go into ballet and be on point shoes again. Absolutely. But there's a lot of other forms of dance. And that's actually how I got into ballroom, Latin, and swing dancing, because they don't hurt my injury. And then I went on to become a world champion in those formats and to continue my dancing now. But that was my emotional resilience. It was changing my belief and asking a different question. That's what got me there. So I want you to think about where you could use that in your life. And know that people with a higher degree of emotional resilience handle the stresses that come with daily life more effectively. And all of us have stress in our daily life, and we need to learn how to use it better. So as I said, there are lots of traits of emotional resilience. There's 8 major ones that I work through with my clients. And today we've already talked about reframing. That's my most important one that has to exist. But I want to go through the other 7 with you. What I want you to be thinking about as I go through these, I want you to be thinking about which of these do you already have? Which of these do you already have in your toolkit? Okay, because a lot of these are things that you probably already possess, and it's good to know what those are. So emotional reframing, we've already talked about. The second one is emotional awareness. And emotional awareness is simply the ability to be aware of your emotions and aware of the emotions of others. You're that person who, when you walk into a room, you can feel the vibe of the room, right? You know when you're in a room that is not going to be a good one, right? You know when the person across from you is having a bad day. You can feel their emotions coming off of them. You're probably super observant. You pay a lot of attention to body language and tone of voice. But that's emotional awareness. The more emotionally aware you are, the more resilient you can be. Perseverance. So perseverance is maybe called grit. Some people call it like staying power, keeping with it. For me, I think about perseverance as that phrase, as I said, I'm addicted to sharks, just keep swimming, right? A shark has to swim to get oxygen. So the fact that the shark is swimming keeps it going, keeps it alive. And that means when they stop swimming, they die. So for us, how do we just keep swimming, right? How do we just keep moving forward, even when the tough times happen? How do we roll with it? How do we keep getting back up and moving forward? And so that's perseverance. Internal control is that ability to believe that you possess the control over your situation. Now, a lot of us have been in things, especially this year, that we didn't think were in our control, right? I couldn't control the COVID virus. I couldn't control the government shutdown. I couldn't control those things. But somebody with a high internal control, they can look at that and say, yes, I can't control that, but what can I control? I can control my reactions. I can control my behaviors. I can control my feelings. So a person who truly believes that they are in control of their fate, they're in control of their destiny, they're moving forward, they have a high internal control. And that really helps with emotional resilience because, again, it goes back to that reframing. If I know I'm in control, then I can reframe my thoughts to have a better outlook. Optimism, I think that's the well-duh one on the list, right? If we're optimistic and we have a positive outlook on life, we're probably bouncing back faster, right? Emotional resilience, the ability to bounce back. Well, if we have those, we're probably bouncing back faster if we have optimism. And all of us know that there's somebody in our lives who is optimistic. And it might be you, but there's also somebody in your life who is super pessimistic. And we can always find them, right? They're always the one to see the negative in every situation and always remind us of all the bad things, right? So being more optimistic makes you able to bounce back faster. This next one is probably the second most important one, I feel, in the list, and that is support. Now, support has two prongs. Number one, are you able to support others? So what we found is that humans are social species, which makes this lockdown so hard for so many of us, right? How many of you are feeling like, man, I really wish I could just see people, touch people, hug people, even people I don't really like that well. I would just love it right now because I just want to be with another human. So we're social beings. And what that means is support is actually critical to our success. And so our ability to support somebody else, if somebody's going through a tough time, your ability to reach out to them, your ability to be the shoulder that they lean on, that actually makes you more emotionally resilient. So it's two-pronged. It's number one, your support for others. Number two, who do you have to support you? And this is something that I think we all need to look at, is who's supporting us in our resilience? Who do you have in your life that you can go to when you're having a bad day, and they don't do the misery loves company thing? They try and pick you up. They try and help you bounce back. They try and put it in perspective for you. We want to focus on those people. We want to keep that support group around us because that's going to help us be more emotionally resilient. Humor. How many of you here feel like humor is one of the things that you have going for you? I know a couple of you, so I know you should raise your hands. Yes. Okay. So humor. People who have humor tend to be more emotionally resilient because they can find the lighthearted piece in a situation, and they're that person who can break the ice, let people laugh a little bit, makes everybody feel better. And the last one, spirituality, faith. In some research we did on top leaders, most effective leaders, what kind of skill sets do they have? When they look at emotional resilience, one of the big things that comes to the top is that most people who score high in emotionally resilient and emotional intelligence also have a deep feeling of spirituality and faith. So believing in some other power, because it gives them the hope. And I think that's really the key there, is it gives people hope, which helps with the emotional resilience. So what I'd love for you to do is in the chat, let me know, which of these do you already have? Which of these is already a skill set for you? You already have a strength in this area. You already have humor going for you. You already have perseverance. What is a strength for you in this area? Just go ahead, put it in the chat. I'm going to take the time to take a little sip here. Got a couple of people with all of them. That's amazing. Yeah. Support and humor, lots of humor, resilience, awareness, optimism. Yeah, awesome. So here's what I'd like you to think about. When you're looking to deal with a difficult time, lean on the skills that you already have, right? I would love to tell you should learn all of these and you should get better at all of these. But in reality, when we're in a tough time, we go to what we know. So focus on what you already have and make those the things that you drive towards when you're feeling down. So if you're somebody who has humor, you know that you have humor, that's one of your go-tos, right? When you're feeling down, put on a funny YouTube clip. Watch a funny movie, listen to a funny podcast, do something that has humor involved, and you'll get better faster, right? If you're somebody who has the perseverance and the grit, maybe when you're facing a tough time, you lean into that and say, but I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to let this get me down. I'm not going to let it stop me. You kind of give yourself that motivational pep, right? Because you've got that perseverance. Maybe it's the emotional awareness and the reframing. You know you're feeling down, so let's reframe those thoughts and let's make it a little better. And for those of you that said all of them, amazing. Try and think about how can you support others using what you have, because support is important in this equation, and we want to make sure that we're using support in all the right ways. So how can you use all of these to support other people? So we talked about reframing, and I gave you a couple examples of that. Kind of went over some of the additional traits, and I wish I had time to go into all of them. Honestly, in our coaching program, we spend a whole month on just resilience because we go into each one in depth and talk about how to create more and more and more strategies around each one. So I don't have the time to do that today. That would take way too long. But I wanted to make sure that you saw what they were so that you can kind of think about what you already have and where you may want to develop maybe some skill sets that you want to focus on moving forward. And by the way, I shared this slide with these slides with Mel, so she'll be able to email those out to y'all in case you just didn't want to take notes on everything and you just want to have the slides for reference later. So we'll make sure to do that. So what I want to leave you with in these last 20 minutes or so that we have together is 3 action items that you can take. 3 action items you can take to bounce back faster as quickly as possible. I was going to say bounce back faster, but that sounded weird. So bounce back faster as quickly as possible. Number 1 is to challenge the thoughts, right? So we've talked about beliefs matter. Your beliefs, your thoughts about yourself, your situation, your environment, they matter. And what we have to do is we have to be willing to look at why do we think this way and change what we think. And guess what? It's just as easy as telling yourself to do it because you're in control of your brain. So you can tell yourself, hey, I want to see that. I mean, technically, you could look out your window and say, I want to say the sky is purple today. And you could just be okay with that. You could just change your belief and you could look outside and say, see, it's purple. See, it's purple. Right now it's raining out here, so it's just gray. So purple is a much better way to look at it. So I just kind of want to say that it's purple just to make myself feel better, right? You can change your thoughts. All you have to do is say it. And truly, what happens to a lot of us is we collect what I call voices from our past. And so now I know some of you probably think you have voices in your head already, and those may or may not be good. But what I'm talking about is all of us have voices of people who've said stuff about us in the past that we hold on to, right? Good and bad. What your parents told you growing up, what that teacher said to you that one time that you didn't get an answer right, what that coach said to you when you could not make that free throw, right? Whatever those things are, you take those voices and you hold on to them, and they form your beliefs, especially as adults. So one of the biggest things you can do to help yourself is make sure that the voice you're listening to every day is your own. Not your boss's, not your mom's, not your husband's, not your kids, not any of it, not your dog. I don't know if your dog is one of the voices in your head, but don't listen to that. Listen to just you, right? Just you. What is your voice telling you to think and believe? And remember to ask those positive questions. What's the best thing that can happen? Not what's the worst thing that can happen. What's the best thing that can happen? And really put that into your beliefs. The second strategy that you can do is to validate and refocus. Now, this again is kind of a double prong approach, because you can do it for yourself, which is great, but it's also an amazing communication tool for others. So I think it kind of works in both ways. So first off, for yourself, always be okay with feeling bad. It's okay to feel bad. It's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to not feel great. Don't make yourself feel worse by feeling guilty about feeling bad. You see what I'm saying? You get this kind of cycle going where I feel bad and then I feel guilty for feeling bad or something like that. It's too many negative emotions. It's okay to feel bad. It's okay to have a bad day. Tomorrow's another day. We validate it. It's okay to feel this way. And then we refocus. Focus on the future. Focus on something else. Change tasks. If there's like something that you're working on at work and it's just not working well for you and you're just keep getting negative about it, like, why will this Excel spreadsheet not work? When you're in that space, validate, okay, it's not working. Let me refocus. Let me take a break. Let me do something else for 5 minutes. Come back, right? Let your emotions kind of cycle out because you're allowing yourself to stay stuck in that cycle. Now, validate and refocus when it comes to other people. So that's for using on yourself. When it comes to other people, one of the things that we have to get really clear on when we communicate is that we validate we actually heard the other person before we give our own opinion. I call it the whole, did I really ask for your advice? Comment, right? We talk and then we're giving somebody an example and then they interrupt and start telling us about them. And it's trying to connect, right? It's trying to connect to each other. It's a good thing. But what ends up happening is you didn't actually tell me you heard what I said. You just started talking about yourself. So now I'm defensive. And now we're going to get into this back and forth that isn't going to be pleasant because I feel like you're not hearing me. One of the number one strategies we can do to communicate better with other people is to validate we heard them before we give our own opinion. To take a second to say, yes, Jessica, I heard you. I heard you say this. I think that's a good idea. Here's how I think we could improve upon that idea. But most of the time, I don't even say any of that. I just say, yeah, well, I think we should do this. It might be expanding on Jessica's idea, but if I don't validate Jessica before I do that, she's not going to feel very good about that conversation. So validate that you heard somebody before you refocus onto something else. Another way to do it is if, let's say you need to change the conversation. Let's say the conversation is going a negative place. You don't want to do that. You just heard Stevie Dawn talk about resilience. You want to be positive and they're taking it negative. Alina, I hear you. I hear that it's a hard day. Why don't we think about blank, right? First validate. And Alina, your name was right in front of my eyeball. So that's why I did that. Nothing about you personally, right? Because she did this whole like, oh, and I'm like, it's nothing. No, not like that. Your name was above my eyesight so I could see it. So if Alina and I are having that conversation, I want Alina to feel the support. Hey, I hear you. Wow, that sounds rough. Yeah, there's a lot we're going to have to figure out. Now let's focus on, right? I'm going to validate her and then I'm going to refocus that conversation onto something more positive because I want to make sure that everybody that I am interacting with on a daily basis, that nobody feels like I'm just bringing them down all the time, right? That we're always talking about the negative. Let's refocus it somewhere else. So one of the key strategies you can use for yourself is validate and refocus. One of the key strategies you can use with others is validate and refocus. By the way, using their name helps. Notice how Alina had a reaction when I said Alina, and Jessica had a reaction when I said Jessica. And now if I say Brooke, Brooke's probably going to have a reaction here. Yeah, see, she looked up. There you go, right? When we use somebody's name, we re-engage them. And that's really important when you want to get somebody's attention and make sure they're engaged in your conversation. By the way, here's a free tip for you if you're doing virtual meetings. Number one way to make sure people stay engaged is call people by name, because they will look at the camera and start paying attention. And we all know we've been in Zoom meetings for 7 hours. We're not paying attention anymore. I get it. I get it, Bunny, but you are here. And I want to say that. And Jeanette and Trisha and Mel and Lenore and Don and Nicole, I can see all the names. When I use the names, you re-engage. So for any of you hosting meetings, use people's names. When you're virtual, it helps a lot. Okay, so it's just an extra communication tip. The last strategy I want to give you is to practice self-compassion. Now, self-compassion is that idea that we should be nice to ourselves, and we should understand that we are a work in progress, and that, you know, we're never going to be the perfectly printed straight $20 bill that we were when it first came out of the printing machine. Not that I like printed this is like actual money, but right, we're never going to be as crisp and clean as the fresh new bill, right? We're going to have some dents. We're going to be a little folded. We got to be okay with that. We have to give ourselves some compassion. And I always say, you give compassion to others. When was the last time you gave it to yourself, right? How many of you feel like you give people second and third chances? Raise of hands. You feel like you give people second and third chances, right? So you have to think about, how many times do you give yourself a second or third chance? Allow yourself to make a mistake. Allow yourself to have to do it over, right? And so self-compassion is just that, saying to myself, it's okay. It's okay. I'm going to say, yep, I made a mistake. I'll get better. I'll do it better next time. Not harping on it, not hanging out in that space for 20 hours, but just saying, nope, yep, made a mistake. I'll do better next time, and moving on. Giving ourselves the permission to do something different, to move a different way, to have a different belief. I always think about as a kid how we had to get permission slip signed for like everything, right? You had to get a permission slip signed to go to the nurse, right? And have her give you Tylenol, or maybe that was just me, but I was one of those kids with headaches, so I had that a lot. You had to get a permission slip to go to the zoo. You had to get a permission slip to go on the bus. Now, you know, I know schools have changed a lot in the years, and now it's like a permission slip to get picked up by somebody different, right? Whereas before we all used to just walk to whoever's car and nobody cared. But now we got to know who's picking up our kids and all these things. It's all these permission slips. When do you give yourself permission to do what you want to do? To handle things the way you want to handle them, to think about yourself the way you want to think about. You don't need anybody else's permission. You can write your own permission slip. You are an adult. You are allowed, right? And kids are also allowed. It's just a little bit different. But we want to make sure that we're giving ourselves permission to be resilient, to bounce back. If everybody around you is still stuck in negative, that doesn't mean you have to be. You don't have to go along with the group. You can be the person who's positive. And positive will always outweigh the negative if you stick with it. Always, 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 right? And we've all had that situation where we've been around somebody and we were negative, but they were positive, and they did it for just long enough that we started to laugh, and we started to think differently, and we started to see things differently. So positivity always wins out. We just have to keep doing it. So how can you give yourself permission? How can you practice self-compassion? Give yourself grace. Allow yourself to make mistakes and be okay with it. Those are all things that we need to do for ourselves, and we need to help others do for themselves as well. So today, right, we've talked about reframing our beliefs to our feelings, to our behaviors, to our results, and our brain is always trying to prove itself right. So what we think is what happens. Let's think differently. So we talked about reframing. We talked about the 8 traits of emotional resilience and how you can use some of those that you already have to make yourself better, to make yourself more positive, to support others as they go on these journeys of negativity that we all go on. And then we talked about these 3 action steps: being able to challenge the thoughts that you have, making sure you hear your own true voice, taking the time to validate and refocus. When you're feeling down, validate. It's okay to feel down. Let me refocus on something else. It's okay to be struggling. Let me focus on another task. We also talked about how you can use that with others. Validate that you heard them before you refocus the conversation. Use their names to get their attention. And then we talked about the need to practice self-compassion, right? Because self-compassion is a really important thing that we all need to work on. Some of you already have it in spades. Some of you probably need to be nicer to yourself, right? I know that that's one area I have to continue to work on, is to be nice to myself. If I'm as nice to myself as I am to my clients, I would have no problems with self-compassion. I'm such a nice person to everybody else, but to myself, I'm my own worst critic. Anybody else their own worst critic on the call? Yeah, right? So let's practice some self-compassion there. So what I would love to see in the chat before we wrap up is, of all those things we talked about, what's a takeaway for you today? What's something that you're going to take away from today and maybe put into practice for yourself, something you want to think about, something you want to work on? I want to know what your greatest takeaway is from our time together. Maybe it's the reframing, maybe it's knowing that my beliefs matter, maybe it's one of the action steps, but what are you taking away from today's training? I want to make sure that this is applicable to everybody. So I'm going to give you just a second to do that. Greatest takeaway from today. Let's see what some of these are. Let me get the scroll going here. Melissa, I'm going to come back to that question in just a second, because positivity can become toxic. So let's talk about that. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. So takeaways: beliefs into the results, reframe my mind to have a great day, challenge my thoughts, practice self-compassion. I'm too hard on myself. Self-compassion and wine. That's great. Absolutely. The brain is wired to be correct. Yeah, it's wired to prove yourself right, and you need to prove yourself right in a positive way. Change your mindset, change your life. Be kind to myself, challenge my thoughts, be nice to myself. Perseverance. Give yourself a break. Never eat ice cream. Well, maybe not never. Just eat ice cream in a good way, in a positive way, not a negative way. Those are awesome. Okay, wonderful. So yes, I know that Melissa had a question already. If you have questions, you can go ahead and pop them in the chat, and I'll start answering those, and then we'll just kind of sum it up and wrap up for today. So when does positivity turn toxic? Right? So I think this is an important thing, because there's a lot of us who have worked with people, or maybe we've been the people that we thought too great, we thought too positively, that we ignored the actual truth or reality of situations. And that can become toxic, especially if you're making decisions based on that positivity. So the way I look at it is this: if we're gonna, let's say we're all in a meeting together and we're gonna solve a problem, the first question I'm going to ask as the leader of the meeting is, what's the best thing that can happen? Let's say everything goes right. What does that look like? And let's all talk about that. Let's be positive. Then I am going to ask the negative question. Let's assume everything goes wrong. What does that look like? We want to make sure that we have an even feeling of both when we're making decisions. And I believe when positivity turns toxic, it turns toxic because we're focusing so much on positivity that we're ignoring reality. And especially when it comes time to make decisions, that's a very scary place to be. And if it's not done sincerely and with authenticity, other people can feel that positivity is fake. How many of us have met somebody or had interactions with somebody where they said, "Hi, it's so great to see you," and you're like, "Yeah, you don't mean that." Right? Like, we've met with those people that just, they were fake. Their positivity, their niceness was not authentic in that moment. And that is when it can become toxic, because we can spot fake niceness and fake positivity a mile away. you can spot it so fast. And the minute you see it, isn't it harder to actually take that person seriously? The minute you see somebody being fake, you struggle to communicate with them. You struggle to take them seriously. You struggle to have a conversation. And so what we want to make sure of is that we are focused, right, on both positive and negative when we're going into decision making. And we want to make sure that when we are positive out loud, that we do it in such a way that it is authentic to us. So one of the things that I talk about a lot is we did that, what I call a pulse check at the beginning, where I asked you for your number between 1 and 10. For a lot of us, when we're having a bad day, right? And so let's say I'm having a 3. It's going to be really hard for me to not sound like I'm having a bad day, right? It's going to come out my mouth. It's going to be hard for me to fake that, because if I try and fake it and pretend like I'm having an 8, everybody's going to know it's fake. It's not going to seem authentic, and people aren't going to take me seriously. So if you feel like you need to fake it till you make it, you need to do it within the confines of what is real, right? So if I'm having a 3 day, I don't show up and lie to people and say, I'm a 9 today. No, I go, you know what? It's not the best day. I'm probably about a 3 or a 4, right? I'm honest with it. That doesn't mean I need to be super negative. That doesn't mean I need to keep dragging it that direction. I can be positive, but you can still have positivity on a 3 day. It's just going to be in little pieces. It's not going to be rainbows, sunshine, and unicorns. It's going to be, well, you know, but I laughed at that joke, or that meme was funny, or I had a conversation with Jeanette and it went well. You're going to come up with little things that make you positive, even on a negative day. So when we let positivity be the fakeness and inauthentic and insincere, that's when it becomes toxic to the people around us and toxic to ourselves, because we're not being honest. And while, yes, we can put a smile on our face and say, it's a great day, at a certain point, you got to be honest with yourself if it's not, and let's start changing the beliefs behind it. Fake it till you make it only works in certain circumstances, and only for so long, which is not very long at all. So we want to make sure that we're being positive in the best situations, and even be positive about our negativity. And I know that can sound weird, but if we're having a 3 day, let's be positive. I am having a 3 day, but tomorrow will be better, right? We can still be positive about our negativity. We just have to learn how to make that work for us. So I know we're coming to the end of our time together, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. It's always a pleasure to do work with the BOMA associations all over the country. They're always great people, and you guys interact and you engage, and I love that. So thank you so much. Thank you to those of you who raised your hands and smiled and nodded and laughed. It makes me feel like I'm like talking to real people, which is so nice, and I really, really appreciate it. And if I can do anything to help you, please reach out. Always available to help talk you through things or talk you off a ledge or whatever it may be. And we do, as part of COVID, we've been doing free webinars every month. So we do free webinars every month. We have one coming up next week, all about communication. If you would like to get on the email list, it's just 1 email a month about the webinar. Feel free to join our list and you can get that. But it's just a way that I'm trying to give back to people, because I know that it's a tough time for everybody, and it helps my emotional resiliency to see people and have conversations. So it's good for me too. So with that, thank you all so much. And Mel, I will turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you, Stevie. I so enjoy hearing you speak, and I don't ever walk away without gaining some insight to myself or how to be of service to others. So thank you for that. I also want to thank Sherry and Mark again from AK Building Services. You guys are dynamite. Love having you. And yeah, I think that's it. I did record this, so I will be transferring it to YouTube, and I'll go ahead and send the YouTube video link and the PowerPoint presentation to those of you who registered. And we thank you for joining us. Have a good day. Bye.